Why do you want solar with a battery? Because you don't want the power to go off. That's fear. Why do you want solar and a battery at your home and a bidirectional V charger? Because you want to be able to make money. So there's greed. And then vanity is you got to have the best product that looks good too, and that's the vanity. So if you think about a lot of our buying behavior, it usually takes one, if not all of those three boxes: fear, greed, and vanity, whether we like it or not. So when you understand that and you're sitting across from someone, you have to understand what is their motivation to sit with you at the table to begin with.
And this is Scaling Clean, the podcast for clean economy CEOs, investors, and the people who advise them. I'm your host, Melissa Baldwin. Each show, we bring you usable insights from tested leaders that you can apply to the business of running your business. 10 years ago, Marco Krapels was on the front lines of the net metering battles in Arizona and Nevada. Today, he's driving a new conversation with utilities to build virtual power plants. Marco is the Chief Marketing Officer at Enphase Energy, the company best known for pioneering microinverter technology, with 88 million units shipped across 165 countries. Marco has a bold idea. What if we added 10 kilowatts of solar, 10 kilowatt hours of storage to 10 million homes? We could generate 100 gigawatts of flexible capacity. That's the equivalent of multiple nuclear power plants. I love his vision for 10-10-10, and I love the idea that in the near future, people like me who have EVs just sitting in their driveways can make money while they're sleeping using bidirectional EV chargers. In late April, Enphase announced a new IQ solid-state transformer for data centers that sent their stock soaring and prompted a major upgrade from Goldman Sachs. All of that and more is in this interview with Marco. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. All right, Marco, I'm so excited to have you on this show today. So we always like to start the show by asking our guests about the company that they work for. You are at Enphase, one of the biggest companies and publicly traded. So in case any of our guests have been living under a rock, tell us, what do people know Enphase for? What do you do?
So Enphase is the global energy technology company based in Fremont, California. We are the world's leading supplier of microinverter-based technologies for solar and batteries, and now also EV chargers. And we've shipped about 88 million microinverters to more than 5 million systems deployed over 165 countries, almost 3 million in the US alone, systems. And at the core, we basically make distributed energy work. Solar, batteries, EV chargers, home energy management, all bundled in one app. And we serve homeowners, increasingly utilities, and grid operators through our VPP solutions. And we've actually recently extended that platform of distributed infrastructure, if you will, into commercial and now data centers with our IQ solid state transformer, which is a 342 power module cluster microinverters that steps down medium voltage to 800 VDC straight into the rack. And so, yeah, that's 20 years of Enphase for you.
Well, congratulations on that announcement. I saw that your stock really went up after that. So that's incredible. And we want to dive more into that in this conversation coming up. But before we do, the reason we do this podcast is because we want to talk to people who have been around the block a few times, who have really learned some things and who can share their wisdom with the rest of the industry. So you've really had an interesting career and background. Tell us about the journey that got you where you are today. Where have you been in the past?
Well, it's been quite a journey, and I used to have a lot of hair, and I was not gray, and that's all over now. But we call it the solar coaster for a reason, right? We've got ups and downs, and I think a lot of us are in this business because it's mission. It's not a job. I always tell some of my people, if you feel like you're waking up and you're dragging yourself to a job, then you probably shouldn't be here. Like you should really be excited about building something great that advances a sustainable future for humanity. I mean, that's why I do what I do. And I ran into this when I was 40. When I turned 40, which is now 15 years ago, I took a sabbatical from banking and I started a foundation after being in Africa. And I realized that kids were hurting themselves by kerosene lights that were catching on fire, and people were polluting their lungs, and they were dying because of those fires. And at that point, I came back from Africa and purchased 5,000 solar lights and went back to Africa and distributed those lights to different schools in Zambia, and with a group of people that helped me co-found the foundation called empoweredbylight.org. And I saw the positive impact that solar energy had on lives and on people who had absolutely no access to power. And then during that time as well, during my the last years of my banking career, I started financing renewable energy. Actually met Elon in the early days, before 2010, and his cousin Lyndon, who ended up running Solar City. And at that time, I was a banker, and they asked me if we could figure out how to connect LA to San Francisco with EV chargers, because we had 100 branches along the 101. And so this is in 2010, New York Times at that time wrote an article about it. But we created the electric superhighway powered by solar. What that basically meant was we put solar on a few of our branches with EV chargers that were powered by solar, so that the Tesla Roadsters at that time, which were the only ones in production, could charge between LA and San Francisco and make their way back and forth. Those were some of the first EV chargers, public chargers, powered by solar on the planet. And I got involved in that, and I just loved it. I just loved how renewable energy could make a difference. And then I started to really understand how electrification of everything could really reduce the need for polluting fossil fuel power plants and save lives. And that became my passion. Started a couple of foundations along the side, and then I ended up leaving banking and joined Solar City's executive team, which eventually led me to Enphase, where I've been for the last 5.5 years. So it was basically, it came out of a sabbatical, trying to do something useful 15 years ago, and then I found my second phase of my career, which is one driven by purpose.
That's incredible. And I love that it was during a time of transition, or a time of, essentially a break, that you were able to just find the new thing for you. Do you think that had something to do with it? Just the fact that you were able to stop the daily grind and think about something else?
It's a very interesting observation. Probably, like it's so easy to get into a routine, get up, go to work, come home. You spend your weekend with your loved ones, but you keep doing that routine and you keep repeating it. It's good every once in a while, or take a vacation, and really disconnect and think about, okay, what makes me happy? What do I want to do with my life? So you're right. It probably was that break, a sabbatical after almost 20 years of service to the same employer, that helped me sort of clear my mind and look at what I want to do with the next phase of my life. That's true.
Incredible. And I want to have you reflect a little bit more on that journey, but think about it from the perspective of your mentors. So we've all had mentors in our life. What is the most memorable lesson that a mentor has taught you?
Be curious. Like when you're in conversation with people or they have a different viewpoint, try to be curious about, well, why are they thinking this way? Or why do they feel so strong about this point? And also to learn. Be open to learning. It's interesting. When I got to Enphase almost 5.5 years ago now, when I joined Enphase, by that time I thought I had seen a lot, learned a lot, and that I knew a lot. And interesting career, executive team, Solar City, vice president, Tesla, blah blah blah. Well, I learned so much here over the last 5.5 years. I mean, Enphase is run by folks that come from the semiconductor industry, which is precision, which is data, it's metrics, it's less about emotion and more about data. And I am a very different kind of person. And I'm an intuitive person. I go by gut. I have passion. I get on planes. I go get deals done. And I work for people, and our CEO is very focused on data. A lot of our meetings are spreadsheets, and we look at numbers and data and trends, and based on that, we have a conversation. And I learned so much around that, like being prepared, showing up, know your numbers, and having meetings, being able to look at data rather than just having anecdotal conversations. So learned a lot in the last 5.5 years at Enphase, much more than I expected. And so the idea of being curious, whether you take on a new job, no matter what your resume has been, be open to learning and growing.
I want to switch it up now. I want to talk about something that you were very passionate about from your past. And I have been around long enough to remember some of those net metering battles that you were involved in. You were deeply involved in battles over net metering. Today, a new conversation is emerging around VPPs. And so it's really interesting how our relationship, the solar industry's relationship with utilities has evolved over time. So I wanted to ask you, is there any lesson that you learned from the net metering battles that you were a part of? And, how can that be applied to the VPP discussion that's happening today?
When I look back at some of those battles, and I still have scars on my back from those battles, we were essentially fighting to keep net metering forever. And that was not a realistic fight. That wasn't, if you look back at it, you have to think about, okay, well, who are the stakeholders here? And at the end of the day, we don't just need energy between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. when solar generates most of the energy. We need it during many parts of the day, particularly when there's peak demand. And that peak demand may be at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. when you come home. And so at the end of the day, what we need as a system is distributed, flexible generation and flexible capacity. And we were focused on preserving generation only through net metering. And and at the end of the day, that would just infinitely contribute to the duck curve, where you produce a bunch of energy when the grid doesn't really need it. And so that over time proved to be the wrong battle to fight. Now we fought like hell. Like in Nevada, I was there for Solar City, camped out in a hotel for 5 months with some money that we received from the big boss. And I hired a lot of former Obama campaign people to help us run this campaign to overthrow the public utilities ruling against net metering. And we eventually won. I mean, I think most, if not all, of that Public Utility Commission was replaced by the governor, but not without some scars. It really juxtaposed, the solar industry against the utilities. And today that's very, very unnecessary. And here's why. Is where I've seen we've evolved, and this has happened even in the last 5.5 years since I joined Enphase. When I joined Enphase 5.5 years ago, we were a one product company. We made the best microinverters on the planet that sit behind your solar panel, easy to install, one SKU, lowest risk in terms of fire because it's AC, not DC. And we take that single micro and we convert DC into AC at the panel level. And that was the product. Today, we are a systems company. We have the solar system, we have the battery, we have the bidirectional EV charger. And when you pull all of that together, what you basically have is a system of of flexible generation and flexible capacity that not only can benefit the homeowner to be able to move the solar energy into a battery and allow the homeowner to generate and save and use or sell what they don't need. But that flexible capacity can indeed be accessed through our VPP software layer and the API that we have that currently is integrated with over 55 VPP programs, where a utility, for instance, can access that distributed flexible capacity that sits behind the meter and send a signal to dispatch that capacity to the grid when that capacity is needed most, like for instance during peak hours, and the homeowner gets paid for that. And so that is a whole new paradigm. And now we've got to get to utilities to go from pilot mode to embracing this at scale, right? And so what you need for that is trust. The utility is used to owning things and rate basing it and turning the gas plant on or turning the gas plant off when they don't need it. And so, and that kind of is within their control. So as a utility, you got to put yourself in the shoes of a utility CEO and say, okay, how do I trust that Bob's Wi-Fi is going to be on when I send a signal to dispatch capacity when I need it? And so where Enphase, and I think where we've come up with a very unique solution is we say, okay, instead of relying on Bob's Wi-Fi, we can aggregate all this distributed capacity for you, okay, out of all these interconnection points, which are customers that have our systems. And if you, and we have predictive controls as well. So we do capacity forecasting right now, and we can do that at P80, P90, and we can basically make sure that the utility has the capacity that they need literally by zip code. And then we can stand behind it as a company, and we have a very bankable balance sheet. We have almost $1 billion of cash on the balance sheet. We're not some startup, right? So the utility can trust us that this capacity will be there for them. And so we have now, this is not just a PowerPoint anymore. We've deployed this at some scale in Europe with very large progressive utilities like Octopus Energy, 1,5 in Germany, but also in the US and more recently with Green Mountain Power in Vermont, very progressive utility. I love what they're doing. And they really have embraced distributed aggregated capacity to manage their loads and to also create more resiliency. So this is working, and we are engaged at CEO level with some very large utilities right now in the US. So I'm very excited about how this has progressed. We used to be, quote unquote, the enemy, and I think we really now can become true partners because we have a system that provides value, right? It's flexible capacity that provides value. And, I think over the next few years, as data centers demand an incredible amount of capacity additions, we are going to be working very closely with the utilities that have that bottleneck to figure out where can we deploy more capacity. And let me give you one more data point. The United States has about 87 million homes with a roof. Less than 7 million have solar. That's insane. Like the Netherlands, it's a third of the homes have solar. Australia, that number is about the same. So imagine if we only added 10%. We don't need to go to a third, but we added current penetration, 7, 8%, we added 10%. Let's say we add another 10 million homes. If we add 10 kilowatts of solar and 10 kilowatt hours of storage on 10 million homes, not that much, there's 80 million homes left to go. We're adding 100 gigawatts of capacity, dispatchable capacity. And so that's a bunch of nuclear power plants. Why wouldn't we want to do that? And so I think the opportunity is right there. We don't have an energy problem at all. We have a deployment problem. And, and this is not about, oh, let me order a gas turbine and wait for 5 years for, Siemens or GE or any of those guys to produce my gas turbine. And I go back of the line. No, we have a distributed flexible capacity that really can be dispatched. We are ready to go, and you can deploy this in a matter of weeks, not years.
if you could wave a magic wand and make this happen, what would you do?
Well, first of all, I think I would reinstate the 25D investment tax credit for homeowners. That was great for them. It lowered their cost of ownership, and if you apply that ITC 30% to both the battery and the solar, you have an additional incentive for homeowners to want to invest in it. Right now, they can. I mean, we are supporting various third-party owners, including one that has a so-called prepaid lease model, where through a somewhat complex structure, you still can get the benefit of reducing the cost of ownership by being able to monetize the ITC through a third-party structure. But we can, if the ITC, the 25D came back, it would just be so much simpler for homeowners to understand why they would want to own solar. At the end of the day, we got to make it easy for homeowners to do the right thing. The other one would be the magic wand, and I'm seeing this with some utility CEOs. So I don't want to discredit those that we are in conversation with. I think they're thinking about things the right way, and I think we'll do big things together. But I hope that every utility CEO wakes up tomorrow morning and says, okay, let's embrace distributed flexible assets. Let's figure out with maybe the public utility commissions how they can still make money if they access distributed flexible assets, even if they're owned by a third party. So that the model is not only we buy and we rate base and we buy as much as we can and we blow up the balance sheet and we rate base it, but figure out how utilities can make money by accessing aggregated distributed flexible capacity to solve their capacity problem. And also the other thing that I say to our utility partners is, if you want to buy it and you want to own it and you can figure out how to rate base it, we'll sell it to you. I'm no longer pushing a model of utilities can't own it, homeowners need to own it. No, it's fine. If utilities say I need to have a bunch of batteries to firm up substations because I've got too many EV chargers plugging in at the same time at a particular hour of the day and it's going to blow up my transformers, if the utilities want to buy and own distributed flexible capacity and place things in front of the meter, that's fine with us too.
Marco, what you're talking about is brought up a couple of things for me. One is, I think it was several years ago. This is before AI and data centers really took off. I was having a great conversation with Ivan Penn at the New York Times, and he said that most energy stories come down to two things. It's one, who pays, and two is who gets paid.
Yeah, yeah. I always say, one of my slogans is get Enphase, get paid. Because, this whole business used to be about saving, saving, saving. Get solar, save money on your bill. But we're gonna quickly move into you know, add flexible capacity to your home and get paid. I mean, think about the bidirectional EV charger. We're launching our bidirectional EV charger in a few months, which basically, if you have an EV, and you can add our bidirectional EV charger, and the bidirectional EV charger allows your car to become backup for the home when the power is out, but it also allows your car to make money for you when you're sleeping. In other words, when your car is parked at home, and imagine this, you're home, and whether you arrive home in the afternoon or you work from home or you arrive home at night, you can just program your car and say, okay, by 6 a.m. when I wake up, my car needs to be 80% charged. And what you do between now and 6 a.m. needs to make me as much money as possible. We take that, we integrate the car through our bidirectional EV charger into a VPP, and energy gets traded straight out of the car onto the network, and you make money while you sleep.
You bring up a great point in that you changed your messaging from focusing on, hey, you can save money, to telling your customers, hey, you can make money. And that's a great transition for the next topic that I want to bring up with you, which is communication, something you and I both specialize in. So, right now, what is the biggest communications challenge that you're facing?
Our audience are the installers and the homeowners. And we've taken 20 years of power module conversion experience, because there are 90 million of them out there in the field. Um, and we've taken that to our new product for data centers, which is the solid state transformer, which is a supercluster of 342 power modules in a box, in a 1.2 megawatt kind of system, which you can put four of them onto a skid, and allows data centers to basically convert, in a single conversion, 35,000 kV to 800 DC, 800 volt DC straight into the rack. And that's going to be the new NVIDIA architecture that will be built in the not too distant future. So we're preparing for that future. And there's a few others. There's a couple of handfuls of competitors, some new entrants. And I think where we are different is we're just leveraging existing technology, and we're bundling that to produce a certain outcome, and also being able to use existing manufacturing lines, which, by the way, we've onshored. So we own a very large factory in Texas, in Arlington. I mean, massive factory, and that's where this will be produced. So, we know how to produce things at scale. We know how to make sure that stuff performs with, very high uptime, with built-in redundancy, because if one microinverter fails, the other ones still work. So there's no single point of failure. Like, we're just leveraging what we know how to do best, is distributed architecture with no single point of failure. But to communicate, to answer to your question, to communicate that value prop to a homeowner versus communicate that value prop to a hyperscaler or a neocloud operator, the guys that run these massive data centers, and that audience is a completely different audience, right? And we're learning. We're meeting, we're learning. It's about understanding the customer, understanding their pain points, and then crafting a communications and marketing strategy around that.
Well, and actually, you brought up something I want to ask you about in my next question, and that is, this is a challenge that I notice with a lot of our different clients that we work with at TigerCom, and that is that they have to communicate to different audiences. And as you just said, those different audiences, the homeowner, the utility, the hyperscaler, the data center, they have different needs, different pain points, different concerns. And so, how do you communicate and have one cohesive voice?
Yeah, I mean, what we make sure too is that, we pick carefully those within the company who get to communicate, right? Both publicly and to the most important clients. And so, I've become, pretty active on the podcast circuit, and Raghu has been great. Badu, of course, our CEO, Raghu, our co-founder. And so we're getting more and more people ready within the company to carry the message. But it's really, the message does resonate around a distributed architecture, no single point of failure, very high uptime, these and incredible efficiency, duration, cost competitive. I mean, these messages resonate whether you are a homeowner, you want the system to work, or you're a data center operator and you cannot afford failure.
So, I want to ask you again, the goal of this podcast is just to share wisdom with the industry. So, are there any books or podcasts that you would recommend to our listeners?
There's a book that I read a long time ago that I found extremely fascinating, and it's called Born to Run. So Christopher McDougall, Born to Run, and it's about ultra runners, and people that run 100 miles because they enjoy that, and it also talks about these Tarahumara indigenous people in Mexico who do it barefoot. It was just, yeah, talking about endurance, just never giving up, and enjoy what you do, even though the run may be forever, right? I mean, look at our industry. It's taken forever to get to this point. And so there's some analogies to, ultra running, and you got to wake up every day and just love it. Just love what you do, no matter how tough it is. If you go into something enjoying it and loving it, then you're going to be able to last a lot longer. So yeah, that would be one book that I would recommend folks read.
Terrific. I was listening to the podcast that you did recently with Molly Wood and everybody in the pool, and you made a really, I think, compelling point where you said that people were really driven by three things: fear, greed, and vanity. Do you want to unpack that quickly for our
Well,
listeners?
Well, it's the ultimate sales pitch too, right? So
Yeah.
fear, greed, and vanity. So why do you want solar with a battery? Because you don't want the power to go off. That's fear. Why do you want solar and a battery at your home and a bidirectional V charger? Because you want to be able to make money, right? Not just save, but make money, right? We talked about it. So there's greed. And then vanity is you got to have the best product that looks good too, and that's the vanity. So if you think about a lot of our buying behavior, it usually takes one, if not all of those three boxes: fear, greed, and vanity, whether we like it or not. So when you understand that and you're sitting across from someone, you have to understand what is their motivation to sit with you at the table to begin with, right? When you start a pitch, are you pitching them fear? Are you pitching them greed? Are you pitching the vanity, or a combination of both? If I were a utility right now, I would be fearful that I cannot access the necessary capacity that I need to meet, not just for resource adequacy requirements, but just, you got a governor in your state that's banging on your door saying, interconnect those data centers. And you're the utility executive saying, how do I do that? And the answer is deploy, deploy, deploy. Distributed flexible capacity. Back to my point about 10 million homes, 10 kilowatts of solar, 10 kilowatt hours of battery. We can unleash 100 gigawatts of capacity, and we solve this problem. We can. And so, and yeah, there's locational value, and we need to make sure that it may need to be on the same distribution line, but we can work around that. We can work that. I don't, listen, as much as I want solar to be a solution for all, it's going to be a combination of all of the above. But we have not anywhere near scratched the surface of what is possible. So we better get to work.
I love it. I love the 10-10-10 plan. It's beautiful. So, what do you do at work or in your personal life to recharge your battery or to bring yourself joy?
Recharge the battery, no pun intended, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So I meditate. That helps, just finding a quiet space once a day. And I just love walking our dog, hiking, my wife and I with our dog Maya, and just listening to the birds, like really hear the birds. I can never understand why people go hiking with these AirPods in their ear. I mean, you're missing out. The most beautiful thing is listening to and feeling nature. That is the most healing part you can do in your daily or weekly activity. And so that's something that's really important to me, is to connect with nature and to really feel it. It's very healing.
Nice. Very good. All right. Well, thank you so much for this interview. I really enjoyed getting to know you, and looking forward to what comes next from Enphase.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Scaling Clean, the podcast for clean economy CEOs, investors, and the people who advise them. I'm your host, Melissa Baldwin. Our producer is Claire Quirin. If you like what you hear on Scaling Clean episodes, we'd appreciate it if you'd give us a 5-star rating and leave a comment where you get your podcast. And until next time, we wish you all the best in the clean economy transition.